Hello and welcome to Zambia Today. My name is Alice Banda. Now on 1st March 2024, President Hakainde Hichilema declared the drought situation in Zambia as a national disaster and an emergency, emphasizing on the need to find solutions to the climate variation situation that has ravaged the nation. And so, on this edition of Zambia Today, we are talking to Mr. Michael Kabwe, the Irrigation Development Support Project agribusiness specialist, who is also the site manager for Momboshi Irrigation System in Chisamba District. Sir, you are welcome to Zambia Today.
Thank you very much.
To start the ball rolling, what is Irrigation Development Support Project, or IDSP, all about?
Okay, thank you so much. So the Irrigation Development Support Project is a World Bank funded project being implemented by the Ministry of Agriculture. The project became effective in November 2011 and has been in implementation till to date. Now you may be wondering why this long. The reason why the project seemed to have taken this long is because it involved 3 different phases. The first phase had to do with the feasibility of implementing a sustainable irrigation scheme in the country. Then thereafter we gravitated into the construction of the actual schemes. And then we are now at the stage where we are now beginning to operationalize these irrigation schemes. The schemes are 3 under the pilot project. We have 1 in Chirundu on the southern province of the country. Then the second one is in Chisamba, and the third one is in Mufulira in a place called Musakashi. The project total financing to date is $115 million as at the time of signing of the financing agreement with the World Bank. And the target was to develop, which we have actually done, to develop at least 9,000 hectares of irrigated agriculture. And it targets 3 categories of farmers. The small-scale farmers, whom we refer to as the Tier 1 farmers, and the emergent small-scale farmers, who we refer to as Tier 2 farmers, and then the commercial farmers. So what it is in the design is that we have tried to bring all the 3 categories of farmers under one scheme. So how does this operate? We are implementing what we refer to as a community-based public-private partnership. So under this partnership scheme, we are trying to see how we embrace the different sectors or categories of stakeholders and bring them under one scheme. So on the one hand, we have the small-scale farmers who have traditionally been subsisting on customary land, and they come consolidate the land onto which government, using the public funds, develops and constructs the irrigation infrastructure. Then by sort of reorganizing the small-scale farmers, we sort of leverage some of the land, which the small-scale farmers lease out to the commercial farmers, whom we refer to as the Tier 3 farmers. The Tier 3 farmer will rent that land and be able to pay the lease fees to the small-scale farmers. In fact, when we aggregate or consolidate this land, we've registered that land in a trust formulated by all the contributors of the land. Then, added to that, in terms of how do we then manage the operations of the public infrastructure. Through a management contract, the government, through the Minister of Agriculture, signs up a management contract of an operator who's from the private sector to provide the operations, management, and maintenance of the irrigation scheme.
The link between smart agriculture and IDSP.
Yes, well,
is there any link?
Yes, there is. There is a huge link. What we have done is, because we realize that there's an urgent need for the country to harness the water resource, and at the same time to ensure that this water resource is not put to waste. So we introduce smart technologies, which we promote among our water users, who are the small-scale farmers, emergent farmers, and the commercial farmers. So in our designs, we've put up an irrigation system that responds to smart irrigation.
How affordable and sustainable is that irrigation agriculture? You know, there's this notion amongst especially small-scale farmers who think it's just for, you know, those big farmers in Mkoshi.
Well, there has always been assertions that irrigation is a very expensive undertaking, and more so seen as being prohibitive to the small-scale farmers, and most of them tend to shun it. And well, not completely shunning it, but also that they could resort to their traditional methods of undertaking irrigated agriculture on a rather small scale. But using the approach that we introduced in the three piloted schemes, we've ensured that we bring together the small-scale farmers and aggregate them into what we refer to as water user groups. So it's within those water user groups, and by the way, these water user groups, they are registered in form of, say, cooperatives. So each water user group will have, say, at least 32 to maybe 45 members, subsisting on a total of, on average, 32 hectares. And it's on these 32 hectares that we empower them to have access to the irrigation technology. So what does that mean? Rather than one farmer going all out to invest in the so-called expensive irrigation technology, we aggregate the resources put together so that they are able to even venture into the seemingly expensive technologies such as the sprinkler irrigation or the rain guns or indeed the center pivots. So by so doing, we sort of leverage the cost that are incurred by the farmers.
And I'm sure farmers can even grow crops throughout the year, right?
You see, the beauty about irrigation is that you have use to land at least 110%. What does that mean? You utilize the land at least 3 times a year. Well, generally we talk about 2 seasons in a country like Zambia. The winter cropping season, which commences somewhere around April and ends somewhere around September. And then the summer cropping season, which commences around October to somewhere around March. Yes. Now, what that means is, depending on the period over which a crop reaches physiological maturity, you have some crops like vegetables that only take you 45 days. So if you have that, it means that you can plant and harvest and plant again and harvest. So you find that within one winter cropping season, you can have 1.5 cycles of production. And during the summer cropping season, same thing can happen. As we speak right now, we've experienced a period of drought. And we've received very, very below average rainfall, meaning that if we have schemes like we have developed under the IDSP, we can already be planting a crop around March. If you talk about our staple crop, which is maize, we can plant now and be able to harvest by June. So by so doing, we mitigate the issue that have the crisis sort of that has befallen us.
How does smart irrigation agriculture differ from traditional irrigation methods?
Well, before I handle the issue of smart irrigation agriculture, let me speak a little bit more about the future of the irrigation sector in the country. As IDSP, we have piloted this CPPP concept, and we believe that it will provide a solution or an answer to the future of agriculture in this country. We have devised a sort of sustainable system where each water user at any one of our core schemes has realized that a water resource is not a free resource, just like any other resource that the country is endowed with. We always speak about 40% of the water in the southern region of the country emanating from Zambia, and yet we have not tapped or actualized what this resource is. If we have to handle irrigation, we must acknowledge that, number one, that water, like any other resources, is a resource that needs to be conserved. It's a resource that should not just go and be misused anyhow. And to do that, we have realized that we actually need to enumerate all water users under the irrigation subsector. We must know and document. And once we document, we must go further and see what is it that all water users will contribute. For instance, in our schemes, we realize that, look, if you have to use this water, government spent money to develop the irrigation infrastructure. And this infrastructure requires maintenance for it to be used sustainably. So there is a little or minute fee that we levy out of that. Minute though it is, it's enough to meet the operation and maintenance costs of the scheme, and also remit something to the central treasury. And our farmers have embraced this because they realize that actually it's through that avenue that we get to harness the water resource. Now, when we look at this water resource again, everyone should know that if you deplete your own water resource, you stay with nothing. And that's what brings in the issue of smart irrigation. So, different crops require different water intake for it to reach its physiological maturity. So, you won't surely just leave water running because it's a resource that seems to be available at any time. So you need to put up irrigation technologies that respond to the crop water needs. This is what we have sort of developed under the IDSP. Smart irrigation involves using systems and technologies that respond to the water requirement. First of all, these technologies will look at two things. Maybe you look at the soil moisture content or the atmospheric moisture content. So with this, and you have very good sensors, they will dictate to the systems which we've in fact automated to ensure that at any one point sufficient water is supplied and nothing beyond that.
Okay.
On the other hand, when you look at traditional methods of irrigation, there is no system put in place that monitor water requirement for each crop. So you find that a farmer will not even pay attention that this crop only requires certain quantities per day, per month, and later on per season. And because it's a resource that is coming free of charge, they are not paying attention to making sure that this resource is conserved.
In case you've just joined us, you're watching Zambia Today, a program that keeps you informed on various government policies and programs. What are the key benefits and advantages of adopting smart irrigation techniques in agriculture for a country like Zambia?
I think the first benefit is that it leads to efficiency, or it helps farmers realize the need to conserve the water, because as already alluded to, we are only supplying water to the field that is required. Beyond that we want, and we have systems and modalities of monitoring that. So that's one major benefit. The second major benefit is that farmers also realize that they can ration their water to mitigate instances where you do not have sufficient water, say, to facilitate your crop growth. For instance, when I earlier on spoke about summer cropping season, usually we have rains in the summer cropping season, but there are instances where the supply of rainwater is intermittent. We use the water that we have stored to supplement crop growth during that period. Now, if we do not conserve the water using smart methods of irrigating, then it means that in times such as this one, when we are lacking, we will have no water available to supplement our production.
Okay. I'm aware that IDSP is a government pilot irrigation project under the Ministry of Agriculture. So how is this project providing a solution to the farming fraternity?
Okay, I think based on the IDSP, we've devised a system or a model that responds to the need. Because traditionally, we've seen that huge investments have gone into the agriculture sector with little or no benefit. But using the model that we've piloted, we realized that a sustainable irrigation sector is only driven by putting in place systems that ensure that you generate enough to plow back, enough to run the maintenance of the infrastructure, enough to expand on and open up new areas. Simple permutations have shown that with a little 1,000, say, kwacha that you invest in irrigation, you can have a return just from water itself of at least 90 kwacha. So you realize that if you spend 1,000 kwacha and you have a return on irrigation of 90 kwacha, that's sustainable enough, because with the bigger land, it means that you levy enough. And then we are just talking about water itself before we talk about the return on production. We haven't spoken about the crop gross margins. We haven't talked about the yield. We haven't talked about all these returns. So the aggregated at national level, or before I even speak about national level, at household level is more. Farmers will benefit more. Farmers will have enough household income, and the country will move at that level.
Okay. As IDSP, do you have any examples of smart irrigation technologies or systems that have proven to be effective in providing water efficiency and crop productivity?
Well, first of all, when you speak about smart irrigation, we are talking about how do we manage our irrigation system to ensure that at any one point there is a dictate that tell us to switch on and switch off. we have indeed installed systems and technologies at all our schemes, which allow one to switch on and off the irrigation system from the comfort of the office. I can be seated here in Lusaka and be able to operate a system that is in Momboshi, Zambia. And that system, again, is automated in such a way that depending on the use by the farmer or water use at any one point, it will switch on and off the sort of sequenced pumping systems. So yes, we first of all introduced modern irrigation technologies. Now, these modern irrigation technologies don't just end at being modern. We link that to some kind of artificial intelligence or computer systems that can allow me to use my phone in the comfort of my house and be able to operate the system. As long as there is a farmer who wants to irrigate, the system gets triggered. If there are 4 farmers, 5, 10 farmers, and so on and so forth, it triggers the next sequence of pumps that turn on to ensure that sufficient water is supplied. And when that is done, again, the switching off process goes on until the last farmer who's operating turns off their pump. So indeed, we have ensured, or we've proven that with smart irrigation, we can do a lot, especially in terms of water conservation.
Okay. What are some of the challenges that farmers are facing when implementing smart irrigation systems, and how can they overcome them?
I think the major challenge to our farmers, especially when we speak about our small-scale farmers, is limited know-how on with regard to technological advancement. I think that's the key. Most of the farmers have maybe limited knowledge in terms of the technologies, and as such they require a lot of training and induction to ensure that they have some sort of hands-on, because without that it becomes almost impossible. The other major challenge is limited financing or limited cash. Our farmers, or before I speak about the farmers, irrigated agriculture has alluded to, yes, there's this cessation, which is somewhat true, but which we've sort of worked around, that irrigated agriculture is expensive, okay? And for a farmer, an ordinary farmer, to venture into that requires a little bit more of the resources. But then these resources put together can be used to even acquire bigger irrigation technologies. For instance, there's this notion, again, I already spoke about this, the notion that complicated irrigation technologies such as center pivots can only be used by commercial farmers who are financially sound. However, that we've tried to work around within our schemes, because we are saying, look, take for instance 60 hectares is just made up of unit hectares. So if you take 60 farmers, they can actually utilize a 60-hectare center pivot. And if you put up if you put up resources, you aggregate the resources, you can manage that. So in short, these are the challenges, and these are some of the solutions that we've tried to provide to our farmers in the core schemes.
Lastly, apart from irrigation itself, what other benefits has the IDSP brought to the communities where it has been established? And what's the way forward?
Okay, we speak about irrigation development support project. So the irrigation and the support rank, you call it, they rank pari passu, they're at par. You can't develop irrigation without handling the issues of support. We are called irrigation development, but yet we've done so much. When you go to these irrigation schemes, we've managed to construct roads, okay, in total of 116 kilometers of service roads, feeder roads, access roads, and so on and so forth. We've upgraded and supplied our schemes with ZESCO power, okay, upgraded from, say, 11 kVAs to 33 kVAs. We've developed houses for households that were affected by the construction of these schemes. In total, 457 dwelling houses. We've put up crossing points, bridges, and culverts. We've undertaken trainings to our beneficiaries because we realize that for them to be able to effectively participate in irrigated agriculture, we need to ensure that we empower them with the know-how. We've exposed them to existing irrigation schemes within the region. We've also engaged on-site trainings. Way forward, I think that's the major one. Currently, we've said we have successfully piloted the IDSP. Okay, we identified from the outset the different entities that would be established at any one scheme. We had the tier 1 farmers who are the water users. You have the tier 2 farmers who are the emergent farmers. You have the commercial farmers who are the anchor farmers. And then in some places like the Mombosh irrigation scheme, we have the tier 4 farmers. Now, in addition to that, we've put up the irrigation infrastructure. Who ensures that this infrastructure is maintained through and through? We have established that we need services of a private entity that will ensure that they run management and maintenance of the irrigation scheme. And how do they do this? They are doing this from the water user fees that each one of the water users is contributing. Now, considering we're a government project, all the resources that are being collected thus far end up in the central treasury. Now, there are emergencies that may occur, or that may occur in the long run. Say a failure in the system or pump breaking down at the time when a crop requires majority or the maximum water for its physiological maturity. And then you need all these process to ensure that you get the money and repair the pump. That would seem to be a major challenge. So we identified that. So, and in our proposition, we say if these schemes are to be sustainable, we have one last key which we need to unlock. We need to establish an SPV, which may take any form, depending on the decision of the government. And this SPV must be tasked with the sole purpose of developing the irrigation sector. Now, that's not the only objective or purpose. This SPV should be created for purposes of ring-fencing the funds flow, aggregating the funds, so that at any one point we have enough funds to run our operation and maintenance and be able to use excess funds to invest in new areas, which we believe we can achieve. Government should not go on and on investing money in a sector that doesn't seem to be bringing a return. We want government to invest once and wait on its return on investment. Government should also generate revenue. And we are saying that if we established an independent irrigation authority, or agents or whatever form that may take, we will be able to propel irrigation to another level. The stats that we look at today, we have 300 days of sunlight. We have abundant water resource. We have in excess of 2 million hectares of arable land. Why should we lag in crop production? All we need to do is put our heads together, task one entity to ensure that there is development of the irrigation sector.
Mr. Kawe, thank you so much for coming to Zani's studio.
You are most welcome.
Well, viewers, that is all we had prepared for you on Zambia Today. On behalf of the entire Zani's production team, I'm Alice Banda saying goodbye and God bless you.